Okay, it looks like we are recording, and I am excited because I pushed the button. The Indie Council is in session. Welcome, everyone. This is a place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather to talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your master of ceremonies, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer, and today, joining the council, working your magic on the Indie Council images, Janet Garcia.
Yo, let's get informed.
Let's
Get
inform it
educated.
up. And overworking on everything from podcasting to production, Jenny Wyndham.
Sob. I will be better next week, I swear. No more
Yeah.
overwork.
You don't need to start off the year lying to us, Jenny.
No.
You know?
I'm doing my best. Every year, my goal is to work less, and one of these days it's going to hit.
Yeah. Like I thought legitimately I was doing so well the first couple of weeks this year, and now I'm coming up against a couple things that are really good and I'm very excited about, but also require a lot of work. So though, yeah, I've already broken that resolution for myself. But speaking of things that we've set up for the year of 2025, we have an official Indie 2025 bingo. And if I remember how the button pushes, yeah, I pushed the button. So here it is, everybody. I will share this link in the description below so everyone can play along with us. But right now, we have 5 Strange Scaffold games, Haunted Chocolatier at the Triple I Show, Jill Forgets Janet's Warning, Silk Song, Grave Seasons, Annapurna and Pop Agenda do a show together. Way to the Woods, Mixtape, and Lost Records get mixed up, especially since Lost Records just pushed back their second part. Sword of the Sea, Mina the Hollower, Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4, Scarlet Deer Inn, Nindy's Revival, Big Mode, Big Announcement, Quarter 1 wins Best Indie, She Dreams Elsewhere, Tanuka Pond Summer, Play Dead Game, Isbeer Dominates. You'll know what that means if you watched the last episode. If not, that's very confusing. Pony Island 2, The Sicko Hole Descent, Hyper Casual / Hardcore Genre, Big Fan Slate, Earthblade is a Switch 2 launch title, and Toem 2 comes out this year. So yeah, we've already hit a snag on our indie bingo because one of those things is not going to happen, and that's going to switch us over to indie news. Extremely OK Games has canceled Earthblade officially. It was announced just as we were recording, just like an hour ago. So this is very early, very recent. But I am going to link the update they have put. The team has put an update up on their website, and it is a very interesting read. But the kind of spark notes of it all is the team had been factoring. And this decision was made in December. So they knew last year that this game was they were going to cancel this game, and it's very interesting, that decision. I would love to kind of talk through what that means. But the fracturing began in December. They made the decision to cancel the game, and it is between a third of the team and Pedro, who was a founding member of Extremely OK Games, a longtime friend and collaborator, I can say that word, art director of Earthblade, and the pixel UI artist on Celeste and Towerfall. The conflict that started all this centered on a disagreement about the IP rights of Celeste. And another big contributing factor was pressure, working on a follow-up game in the wake of Celeste, which was this huge success. And so there are a lot of things to kind of jump into. And I know y'all saw this. What are your initial thoughts on what we're seeing here?
I mean, my gut
Are we
reaction
the ones to
was,
blame?
yeah, I
Are
know.
we the
I
ones
was
to
like,
blame? I know.
we called it, and then did we curse them by naming Earthblade in the bingo card?
Makes you wonder what Silk Song, what's going to happen with them now. Janet and Jenny. I hope you're sitting back and,
Can we
you
take the
know.
responsibility? I don't know.
Maybe it's like one down, one up. Like I'm not really sure, but I mean, this
Mhm,
is
mhm.
definitely I think one of my reactions is just how like novel this is to get. Again, I think either last episode or a few ago, I mentioned that one thing that's unique to the indie scene is that we get way more transparency than we ever can get from AAA, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
you know that includes the good and the bad. And not that this is like I don't want to paint an overly negative look at this, but at the same time, it is inherently like kind of bummer news. I think the right
Mhm.
decision isn't always like an exciting or positive one. I think canceling a project is definitely um a pivot they weren't expecting. Right? No one sets out to make something expecting to let it go,
Yeah.
give
Mhm.
up on it, cancel it, shelve it, however you want to phrase it. On the same At the same time, this happens plenty of times in the game industry, but maybe more so behind the scenes. There are a lot of projects where they never even get this far into production before they kind of get shelved and things. But yeah, I think it's really cool to weird words to use, but kind of cool for them to be as transparent as they are. Like to say
Mhm.
that like we kind of had some issues among us. Like I think they are still trying to be respectful of their privacy, but also mentioning something like disagreement over the IP rights of Celeste and the pressure of following up Celeste. Like to actually hear that from them is just really interesting because they easily could have just been like, I don't know. Like we're not making, we're kind of just not making it creative differences or whatever and left it at that. But at the same time though, this is still not everything, right? I am curious, like whenever I get a statement like this, I wonder what part isn't being said, if this is what is said. So that always just kind of piques my curiosity. But yeah, I'm glad they were able to share something as informative as it could be, because otherwise we'd be sitting here talking about what do you think they meant by this? And instead we
Mhm.
have something a lot more tangible to go on, which is cool to have.
Mhm. Yeah, I was really disappointed to see this news. I think a lot of people will be, but I think it is really like especially I think making games is a very personal thing no matter what level of game making you're at, but especially on indie teams. Like I can tell from personal experience, like you were spending this many years because they've spent already quite a few years working on Earthblade. Like this is both work and it's very personal. It's a small team. I would assume formed through like friendships initially too. So there is this element that I think, like you said, Janet, really cool and like really vulnerable for them to be willing to share this because they definitely didn't have to. Um, I think a lot about the pressure that we have with some of like the indie darlings and the not solo or small team launches that blow up and the
Mhm.
pressures that teams may feel, especially on their subsequent launches. We joke about Silk Song, but honestly, I really feel for Team Cherry because
Yeah.
they are like the longer it is until Silk Song launches, the more that pressure just rises and the more you feel like, how can a team even cope with that? And I'm sure they weren't prepared for it. I think of like the Haunted Chocolatier, even Deltarune with Toby Fox, like all these indie darlings that we have prescribed so much to, and how challenging it can be to follow it. So I think that has been really interesting to think about in the wake of this, even though there are many other factors in canceling Earthblade. And I also feel like it's really refreshing to see folks talking about the failures. We talk a lot about the successes in the industry, and I'm saying failure in the sense of it didn't go as planned.
Mhm.
And I would love to hear from more teams. We have titles like, oh, was it Revenant Hill, the one from the Night in the Woods team originally, and they ended up having to cancel as
Have to
well.
cancel it. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and I think back to some of those titles, and I would love to see more people vocalizing like what went wrong with the projects. Um, through notes like this or maybe wider talks to help teams learn and grow because it's like the only way we can learn is from failures. You don't learn by being successful.
Right.
And so I think sharing this helps illuminate even a little bit for other teams things to look out for. I think about long development cycles and the slog that happens when you've worked on a game for that long. Like that probably contributes and is a multiplier to the burnout teams feel on top of the interpersonal stuff happening and like the normal chaos and stresses of development. So I don't know, it's really sad news to see, but I'm really heartened by the way that they're choosing to share it because it is,
Yeah.
like you said, novel to the industry.
I think this is one of those things, these topics is something that makes me miss Game Informer so much. To bring it into another weird realm, because I did back in the day do an article on that was called The Aftermath of Success, and it was exactly on this topic, and one of the people I
Mm.
talked to was Eric Barone, who's doing Haunted Chocolatier, um, who was able to just wax poetic on the topic of, like, what that pressure does to you and how it affects the way you do the next thing, and just the how, yeah, completely more transparent you can get with indie developers rather than a lot of the AAA, which we have a very recent kind of analogy with all the kind of Sony stuff getting canceled and that information coming to us via Jason Schreier rather than any kind of official news is sort of how the AAA space tends to talk about games that get canceled is like someone has to sniff it out and then share that information. Otherwise, it just quietly kind of floats down the river and nobody really knows that it exists. And yeah, it is a weird thing because the thing that puts pressure a lot of the time is just our excitement on things. Because yeah, I put it in my top 2025 wish list. We obviously have it on our bingo card. I think one of the cooler things about the indie community is that we also tend to temper that with like, "Hey, you do whatever you want. We're not trying to like pressure you." To the most part, if people are delaying things or if things like this happen, most of the sentiment that I'm seeing is like, "Hey, that must have been an incredibly difficult situation to go through." And
Mm.
like like you were saying, Jenny, it's got or maybe Janet, I can't remember, but it's got the layers of like professional and personal to it because you're talking about your co-workers but also your friends who you've been sort of in the trenches with for years. And this was obviously a high profile game. Celeste makes that impossible that their next game isn't going to be a high pressure situation and how they navigate that. I think the whole article is really worth reading because they talk about what went into their decision making and why things went the way they did. They were also everyone seems like as far as the writing goes, we can't know exactly what happened behind closed doors or what the sentiments are. But everyone seems to be okay with each other. Everyone seems like they are hoping for the best for everybody. So publicly speaking, everybody's still on good terms, um, which is also nice to see because not just in the indie space and in the AAA space, like you see a lot of toxicity, which causes some problems and breaks things apart. And that doesn't seem to have been the case here. No one's coming forward with like harassment or anything like that. Um, but yeah, it's kind of a shocking out of nowhere thing. And I wonder if we're going to hear any more of it or what the next game is from Extremely OK Games.
Yeah, I will say, I am happy that near the end of their post, they talk about how they're excited to explore smaller scale projects and sort of rediscover the joy of creating games. So I'm really hoping that they are able to find that joy again and get back to like the process of creating in a positive light. Again, I think it's really interesting how they talk about the process of the sunk cost fallacy of do they decide to continue with this game that they are pretty sure they could still make very great,
Right.
but is it worth the like investment that it will take and the sort of energy that it will take? And I just appreciate very much that they are willing to say it's not worth the personal, like the human cost
Hmm.
essentially of slogging through this, but they're willing to take it back and say we care more about the people over this product and we're going to like reset for ourselves. And I really respect that they were able to make that call because especially in a really uncertain game development era with like funding and financial stuff. Like, I can't imagine turning away from a project that is, they probably would have been very successful with this, and so I think they're really showing how much they care about like the humans behind the game versus like just making a game and like having another potential success. Um, yeah.
Yeah. That I mean, just to kind of branch off on a tangent just for a second, like, is one of the so interesting things about Wanderstop and the themes that that game is going to be exploring, might have a lot to do with that as well. I swear I'm gonna get that preview up soon, and I'll talk about that game and what is happening with that, but
I remember when I started writing those
yeah.
articles like 8
Mhm.
months ago. I'm like, you know
I
what?
was I was so proud of myself. I did like in the
Catch
back
kids next
end, I
time.
have all of the like shells set up and some images in there. Like, I'm just gonna knock these out. Yeah.
No, I got kind of tired, but I think too like the some other things I want to point to before we move on is the other thing that was mentioned was it's Noel, Maddie, and Pedro is like kind of the core, and they have like collaborators like Lena and other team members come in like Amora and the Power Up Audio team as well. And kind of talk. They
Shout out
mentioned
Power Up Audio.
that yeah they do really cool stuff. Pedro kind of since then splitting off, in relation to like the disagreements over the IP rights of Celeste. So through that, we did get a shout out to Pedro's next game that he's working on, which is Neverway, which they link out to in this post, which is uh, cool of them. Obviously, again, we always have to take things and look at them critically. This is not to say everything's definitely perfect, but I think it is cool and promising that they shout out his current project. Again, doesn't guarantee that everyone's best friends, but I think it speaks to something positive in that parting of ways, which they allude to in this post as well, which is nice to hear. And then to add to what you mentioned, Jenny, with the scaling down and having like a smaller game, the third to last sentence is scaling the core team up post Celeste has ultimately been a failure, and that's okay. And I think that's kind of interesting as well because I feel like sometimes in the indie space there is that question of what's next, what's sustainable, are we looking to grow into a bigger studio? Are we going almost into double A? Are we growing like outward and having, multiple projects run kind of, we've seen, Strange Scaffold kind of have a multitude of projects, but of course they have their own stuff of, well, what do we do when we have so everyone is always dealing with like different challenges and with every opportunity also like closes the door to something else as well, right? Like Strange Scaffolds mentioned that with how many games they put out, they kind of can only make so much in terms of scope can go into it if they're putting out as many projects. It also means they don't do things like DLC or like an ongoing game situation, which is totally fine, but that's just kind of within constructs comes inherent limitations. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely curious to see how this might open things up for them. Will they move to a model where they are putting out more games more consistently? Again, not trying to put the scales either way. I think the team makes great games, and they're certainly a group of talented individuals. So I'm still excited for what they have next. But yeah, definitely curious to see how this shifts things. And yeah, definitely a little sad too that Earthblade isn't there. Just in that anything they do, I feel like would have been cool. And as much as they will still create afterwards, it will inherently be different because like the team is slightly different. So that how much is that felt on the player side? It's not in the sense that we don't know who does. Everything's so collaborative that you don't have like necessarily the sense of this person did this thing, but it is just inherently different. But that's true of a lot of studios, especially on the AAA side. People are moving in and out all the time. Again, doesn't mean the product isn't going to be as good. Definitely feels also like it's like nostalgic because it didn't exist. But the concept art they posted on this, I'm getting nostalgia from
Yeah.
that. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's
I'm
like I
like,
didn't play Earthblade because it didn't come out, but I'm like, yeah, I remember Earthblade.
I
You kind of
remember
looking
that.
at it,
That
it's
was
just kind
great.
of. I think it's really nice that they shared that. I think the fact that they kind of, I'm sure they touched it up a little bit to get the render in there speaks to a love they had for the project. And again, you could say, oh, everyone loves their projects, but I think that's what's nice about the post. Like some of those aspects really come through. So yeah, definitely. I echo, give it a read. You don't get a lot of posts like this. So I think it's definitely worth looking at.
I think that's a really interesting branch to kind of follow of like what do you do when your game becomes really successful as an indie? Do you like start to level up and get more people in or stay scrappy? Like it makes me think of Red Hook Studios last
Mhm.
year announced that they had been acquired by Behavior Interactive, which is such like again another out of the blue thing and another studio that's really open and honest about what was going on, and just the fact that that team had grown to the extent that the funding needed to be secure in order for that studio to continue to make sure everybody could, pay for rent, essentially.
Mhm.
Uh, so I mean, that's another interesting way of thinking of like if Extremely OK Games continue to ramp up, like is that where they eventually end up? Like the path of where indies go after success is such an interesting topic. Um, but yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's kind of like the whole mentality of uh, just because you're successful, uh, I feel very strongly about the fact that it doesn't mean you need to grow your studio. I don't think studios need to be bigger to be successful. I think also it's sort of along the lines of like just because like workers in a company, it's like all we see is that vertical sort of ascent, and we don't talk about a lot of lateral growth, if that makes any sense. And so it's interesting because I think the industry as a whole right now, we've seen a lot of that vertical ascent, and we don't have that lateral like foundation or stability. And so it's interesting to see studios like finding ways to be stable, whether that's like securing publisher sort of partnerships or like partnerships with other studios, whether it's figuring out, okay, maybe we can't scale up, we have to stay a certain size to be able to be like sustainable. But I think it'll be really interesting over the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, especially seeing how studios explore not just the vertical ascent to growth, but this like sort of how can we expand within this like realm we are currently at. Um, I think a lot of like people who, especially developers who aren't necessarily leaders, who are like, oh, just because I've done this thing for so long, I should be a lead of a team or I should be a director. And it's like, it's not necessarily for everyone. And I think as an
Yeah.
industry, we're sort of
Yeah.
seeing that as well.
100%. So, with the morning continuing, we would like to discuss Mike's absence. We are sad that he has left us this episode.
He's alive, just to be
I
clear.
was going to say, Mike is
He's
still
left
with
Let's
us.
just let
us.
you know.
He's left us to our own
2025
devices.
had its share of problems. Let's get out the
This is not
out
one of
front
them.
and say that this man
Yeah,
is alive
Mike is
before the bit
alive.
continues. But
Um, however, he did request for a Mike in memoriam. I can't remember which one is the
yeah,
correct word.
you got it.
Um,
Memoriam, yeah.
for this episode because he could not join us. His last request was please mention Fun Selector's new game tease and how much of a effing bop Art of Rally is in my memory. So we've done that for you. You're welcome, Mike. Uh yeah, so Fun Selector announced an announcement that we should all be keeping an eye on. I think when this show is out, it's very
Hmm.
possible that the announcement will have been announced. But for right now, all we have is the very short. We announce a new game tomorrow. Smiley face. It's literally all we have. But for anyone
There's a
who
little video of panning through the kind of like fall foliage, and there's
Mhm.
cars. Is it another driving game?
uh,
I'd assume so, but well, if you're listening, you know more than we do because you're living in the future.
Wow.
yeah, look at that. Ooh, share that screen.
Fancy.
I know.
No dark
I'm
mode,
getting
Jill. Interesting. Another piece of the puzzle falls into place.
Wow. Yeah.
what? What? I wasn't paying
Yeah.
attention. I liked it.
We're just teasing you that you use blue sky, and I'm assuming other parts of the internet in light mode, not dark mode.
Oh, sorry.
Harsh
Yeah,
on
I
the
do. I
eyes.
do. It, keeps me from doing it in the dark.
Yeah, keeps you
Uh,
humble. Yeah, I
yeah.
Yeah.
guess.
I'm a light mode sicko, not like that Mike, who we've talked about before, took my dock and made it completely dark. So
That I don't rock with. The though I've gotten used to it now with the I don't need an all blacked out Google Doc. That's a little too much for me, but
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
like it. I got used to it.
So yeah. Keep an eye out on that. For anyone who doesn't know, Fun Selector is the Art of Rally developer and publisher. Um, so yeah, it kind of looks like Art of Rally. I'm not gonna lie. What we are seeing
Mhm.
here, just a looping kind of walking up to jeeps around a campfire. Looks pretty.
Yeah, it does look a little bit again, we're just looking at the teaser here. It kind of looks a little like higher fidelity than Art of Rally.
Mhm.
Not that they're kind of all going for almost like realistic cartoon sort of graphics. Yeah,
Yeah.
Art of Rally isn't my jam. I'm just not a rally racing person, but I know Mike is. My brother who listens to the show loves this game, so he'll be very excited to hear. It definitely has its fans. If you're like in that genre, this is like one of the big ones.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this will be
I was gonna say, do you
the
think it's
time
like
the time it works for me.
multiplayer maybe? Because there's like 3 cars
There's
hanging
three
out by a
cars.
campfire. So I'm
There's three
like, are they
cars.
teasing multiplayer something?
That would be really cool.
Cozy cozy rally
Are
car
the cars
game with a
friends?
campfire?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I do like
exactly.
exactly.
it. They're all just talking. It's like
This is
Toy
how they hook
Story
me.
and
Yeah.
Cars brought together. They're all pretending to be non-sentient when we get by. So yeah, that's going to be a really cool thing to check out. And we miss you, Mike. If only I could like put a little like in the arms of the
I was
angels
gonna
in the
say, just
background with a
Yeah.
little heart of Mike. But yeah, with that,
presumably back next week, though, once again.
presumably he'll be back next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we won't miss him at all. And we can
Mhm.
I don't know why he lets us do the show without him because he knows that we pretend to be him. We say very silly things when he's gone, but you know, that's how it is. Let's head into topic of the show. This topic of the show came in through my inbox, and I was very interested in the idea of answering indie devs' questions. We don't often get direct like this is what I'd like to know. We are trying to some degree demystify a lot of what goes on in our various fields of influence. So I thought this would be a really cool way to do that. I got an email from a developer with a game that is coming out of a long early access period asking for my opinion on a variety of topics. uh, so let's go ahead and dig in what they've said. I'm going to keep this developer in the game kind of secret because I want this to be a discussion that will help anybody with this sort of question. But for the purposes of the discussion, I'm just going to read some of their introduction. So their email read, the development has finally completed. We're now thinking about the business side of things. We receive contradictory advice on how to move forward and hear different things from third parties. I was hoping you could give us some insight and help us navigate the difficult route to releasing a debut game. So, our questions. Uh, Essentially, do we need a publisher or PR company to get coverage from media outlets? What should our angle be in contacting journalists? Should we ask for a review or only for a release announcement? Does sharing our pitch deck, that the one that we send to publishers, help to get coverage? And what is your general impression? Is what I've written. What are your general impressions slash other advice? So let's go ahead and I actually want to start with the first sentence here. Uh, it says development is completed and we are only now thinking about the business side of things. Like, I know that
Fuck.
making a game is is really tough. It is very, very hard. Um, but this is something like if you are making a game and you want it to be out there and about, you need to be doing these things hand in hand with making the game. Like you need to be getting it out there. You need to be getting people's eyes on it. It is very, very, very difficult if you. I've gotten so many emails just today of indie developers who've made something they're very proud of that are like, hey, my game just came out. It is up on Steam as of today. can you write about it? And like 99% of the time I have to go, no, I really can't, because my schedule is set so far in advance. I am working on things that are in the future that are swamping me currently, that I just don't have the mental capacity to champion a game that is now completely out. So that's my first initial reaction. Janet, did you have another thought process when you first saw this?
Yeah, I thought of I mean, I also don't want to scare the person who wrote it cuz like there's no time like the present, right? But
Yeah.
you know what else was a good time? The past. You
Yeah.
know, so yeah, I do think this was the classically, oh no, like you're just now thinking about it. Like that kind of sucks because I think we've talked several times on the show about the importance of building momentum. I definitely think I can relate to why this happens though because it is it's hard to make a game and your timeline might be very in flux, especially if you're only a single person. So you're like, well, wasn't sure how serious it was. And I wasn't sure, I think the reason that this might end up happening for a lot of people is that you get so focused on making the thing and you don't want to like show it until it's ready because there's also that pressure of like, well, if I start dropping like assets and gifs and video clips, will it like be bad when it like looks different later and things like that. So I think those kinds of things also hold people back from starting to get themselves out there more, where it's like, well, I think the best thing to do will be just to make it and then do that after because then I already have a thing to show. So yeah, but so that's my gut reaction, which I think we often have when we see this come
Yeah.
across.
Jenny, it looked like you visibly
Yeah.
had a reaction there.
Because I feel for this, because I totally like I think any person who's done development and then realized they need to market the game has done this, and I feel it viscerally because I understand both the pain of realizing that you need to actually get the game out there, and also I feel the pain on the other side because I work in marketing. So like this is my bread and butter right here. I completely agree. I can feel that like I from a personal perspective, like I'm working on Spirit Swap, for example, that game is not my day job. And a lot of indie devs are not doing this as their day job. They're doing this
Yes.
as a side gig, side hobby. You're not getting paid. And so it can be really difficult when you only have like 6 to 8 hours in the evening after you're already exhausted from a long day to then make a game and create marketing materials because there are two very different parts of your brain that work to do those things. And that is an oversimplification, even. And so one of my first reactions was just, yeah, pain. I feel it. I understand. But also wondering if, depending on where you're at with your development, your announcements, and if you have a publisher or if you have a partner that you're working with in terms of like funding, what flexibility do you have? Because if your development is completed, one possibility is if you don't have a release date announced, I would say don't announce it yet. You've got that game in the can, budget a certain amount of time for marketing. And now the development of the game is the marketing of the game. We know ideally it's happening concurrently, but you can have phases. And I think seeing and approaching it like that may be a good opportunity to perhaps build yourself some time to market the game while not also having to make the game at the same time, if it's feasible, because that's not always feasible. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing that I want to address just in this first section before we even get to the questions posed, as a journalist, if you like early as part of their like niceties opening to this email, they somewhat contradict in words their actions. So they acknowledge how busy journalism can be and they appreciate our time. Which is a nice sentiment. I appreciate that, and you should put that in your emails if you are sending things out to people because most of the time it is very true. All of us, no matter what part of the industry you're in, are very busy all the time. Um, ask Sending an email to journalists asking how to market your game and how to do this, and this, how journalism works, and how to like deep dive in, is a very time intensive ask. You are asking for a lot of help. And luckily, the Indie Council is a great space for us to take that time to be able to think about this question and be able to answer a lot of the questions. But in the broader sense, if you are sending a busy journalist a bunch of questions even before they can get to covering your game, that email is going to be ignored because people just like everybody in this industry, as far as you know, anyone I would take seriously, really cares about games. And that's why they're in this industry. That's why they want to write about games. They do want to give you that effort. They do want to give you the spotlight to be able to show things off. Um, but if they have to spend hours thinking about how to help you in various different ways before you even like, here's my game and this is what it is, um, you might be out of luck. So that's, a first initial approach to what is happening in this particular email outreach. So let's go into the actual questions. Number one being, do we need a publisher or PR company to get coverage from media outlets? I don't know what the statistics are here. Jenny probably is going to be able to talk more about that, but maybe Janet and I can talk to just for our own coverage. For me, it does not help. Uh, if you are able to get my attention in my emails, then there's no reason that a publisher or a PR company is a requirement for me to cover you. I don't go, hey, this person has a publisher, therefore they're better for me to cover for whatever reason. I don't think like that. Um, the reason behind the publisher or PR company to get coverage from media outlets would be because they know who to talk to and how to talk to them in order to get things in front of the right people, and to help those people do their jobs as much as possible. Going back to what I was just saying, they know how to very quickly get imagination running. They'll usually give the bullet points of like, these are some interesting angles and why you might be interested in this project, and this is the story, this is like the compelling behind the scenes reason why this is the game you want to cover. Like, that's usually what a publisher or a PR company is going to do for you, versus if you are a solo or single small team developer, um, and this is your debut game and you've never really worked with the media before, um, just kind of going, "Hey, this is a great game and I've been working on it. I really want you to cover it," like, is less likely than to put out all of those bullet points and to talk to the right people. The right people, a lot of the time, if you know who the indie people are at big outlets, that's gonna be huge for you. And knowing which indie-focused people to talk to as well is another big thing. But Janet, what do you
Mhm.
think about that?
I think, anything can work if you work kind of deal. But I do think, obviously it depends on if you have what you would need to be able to like get like a PR card. I don't really care about publisher to be honest. A lot of indies self-publish, and I honestly, frankly, I'm not often glancing at the publisher like in the I'm not clicking the Steam link and then being like, well, who publishes it? Like, I'll look at it as a fun fact. Especially if I end up liking the game, I want to explore more of that publisher or whatever. But like, the only time I'm clocking publishing houses is when it's like Devolver, like it's because they're emailing me though from that. I kind of put that in more in the PR thing.
Yeah.
um I kind of a combo of what you said, Jill. I feel like PR representation, personally, it does make me kind of not look at it more because I'm looking at everything because that's the job of clearing the inbox. But again, the formatting and also the what the PR house might imply to me, at least, as like as someone covering games, keeping it out for games, where it's like I know that, and this isn't true for every published PR house, but a lot of them kind of have like sub-taste or vibes. Like, I
Mhm.
know that when I
Mhm.
get a email from, I'll just throw some out there. Future friends, it's like, okay, I know what kind of vibe I'm getting. I'm getting probably like, there's a good chance it's gonna be heavy narrative. It's gonna be like some type of funky art style, and those are some of the. And maybe it'll have like a dose of heart, maybe even a dose of like representation from like marginalized groups. That's what I feel like I get from that PR house. I don't know if that's how they go about selecting like who they represent. Whatever, that's the flavor I get from Future Friends. A lot of the times, maybe it's also just what I sign up for, right, and what I have on their list. Pop Agenda, like they do, we get the toems types like that. It's like, okay, you kind of get like adventure. Again, story might make a presentation, and there's differentiation within like I think every PR list I'm on, but there's a lot that like have versus there's some that like they represent a lot of games, so I get like a big slew of stuff. Like when Evolve hits my inbox, I'm getting a lot of different stuff. Like I'm getting action, I'm getting shooter, I'm getting, it's not as I know what to expect when I open this email as it is for other ones, and I think that's the only degree to which it's noticeable versus like you said, Jill, if it's just written by a person, I'll still open it and read it, but it's kind of like a is it the chicken or the egg thing? Like, is it really that I'm like, oh, I'm excited because this is like Evolve or whoever? Or is it that like if you just formatted it nicely, I wouldn't it'd be the same kind of feeling, you know what I mean? Where it's like when you get a well-written PR email, it's very scannable. As soon as before you even open it, it's in there. Keys available, code request, announcement. It's like, okay, cool. Boom, I already know. You're glancing, you're getting stuff presented to you in a way that feels professional, succinct, informative. There's not a lot of times that like a pitch can sell me on a game, but there have been some times. Later I'm going to mention I played a game called A Short Trip, and I was like, I got several emails on that game, and was like, I'm good, I'm good. And they're like 5 years to make, 5 minutes to play. I was like, damn, that's interesting, and that's what got me to play it. That doesn't always happen, but it can happen, and that's the skill that PR can bring to the table. Anyone can write, but they're very skilled at doing that. That is their job, and they're skilled at doing it, and they have a big craft. So I definitely think there's benefit to that for sure. And then you also just have like, all the knowledge and expertise they have. Someone that really asks these questions too. But yeah, I don't think you need to legitimize yourself, but I think it provides a lot of support and opportunities for learning and growth and outreach that you can kind of buy yourself some time. Like they know all this stuff. They know who's who. And I think those are the benefits for it. So a little bit, I would say it does affect it a bit for me at least. And maybe that's just how it's presented as well. But yeah, some of the PR people, they be writing,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
And
that's a good line.
and we have personal relationships a lot of the time with these PR
Mhm.
people. So they're like, if someone I know is hitting up my inbox being like, "Jill, I know this is gonna be your jam," even if it wasn't something I was gonna check out, I'm like, "Okay, this person knows me. They've, done me good in the past. I'm gonna check this out."
Mhm.
Jenny, what are you thinking over there?
Yeah, you both have hit on some really, really strong points. I always think of any effort in life really, but especially with marketing, PR, publishing, you have the scales of time, money, and effort. And you have to balance how much time do you want to spend on something? How much effort are you putting in? And if you cannot put that time or effort, how much money are you willing to put to
No,
make
because I'm
it?
so broke. I hate that
And
that's
so,
true. You're so right.
yeah,
Consider
it's
this.
like
We got that.
yeah, and so there's a balance, right? And so PR companies, publishing, they do cost, well, publishers are slightly different. PR companies, PR houses, they will cost you money, but they will save you if you have the funds a lot of time and effort in the ways that both Jill and Janet have covered, where they have the experience, they have the knowledge, the relationships. I know just from like doing even the light PR outreach I've been efforting, and doing for Spirit Swap, the industry's journalists are switching it up, not by choice, but there's a lot of change happening. PR companies, their job is to stay on top of that for you. And so, even if you have maybe prepared and 3 months ago you tried to find all these emails, a lot of that's changed. You probably have to go back and find it again. So, the benefit to having someone doing that for you can be really huge. Um, but do you miss credibility for not having one? I would say as long as you are willing to put in the effort to, like Janet said, structure your emails properly, like Jill said, research the tastes of the journalists that you are trying to reach out to. If you can put in that effort, you can still stand a chance for reaching out. So it's really about understanding where your needs are as a studio and where your time and money can fit within that. Um, that's tough because a lot of times we are short on both time and money. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, number 2. What should our angle be in contacting journalists? Should we focus on gameplay with its trailer? Should we focus on our dev story of working a crazy amount of time? Maybe both.
No.
Um,
So, yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
hate to
Janet. I need you
I
to.
hate to say that because it sounds really mean, but no. Like unless again you can make it into the example I gave with like a short trip, that's a rarity. The 5 years to make, 5 minutes to play, because it sounded good. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. And again, that didn't excite me because I was excited at the idea that someone worked for a long time on it. I just thought it was like, oh yeah, that's interesting to see this all strung. Like it made it make the project intriguing. Most, I think also too, like when we think about what makes you unique or different or notable, unfortunately, working really hard for a lot of time is what most people have done to make their game. So it's not really like a talking point in this context, even though of course like we talk all the time about the show about how much we care about the work that goes into games, how hard it is to make games, how much we respect those efforts, but that doesn't make them notable for like, again, what is the point of this method of communication? It's to inform me of the big points that you want me to know, so that I can use that to decide how interested I am in your game, what I might, and there should also be some form of like call to action a lot of times in these emails. Not always. I've definitely gotten ones that are just like, hey, we're letting you know like this new trailer drop. It also depends, and scale and scope of the game. Some games warrant something like that where it's like that's relevant, and some games might not. You have to kind of know what's going on there. Um, but yeah, I would say if you had to go back to the direct question, like what should we focus on? I mean, honestly, like a lot of, again, this goes back to the time thing that you just mentioned, Jenny. My method for like learning how to do anything is to look at what other people are doing and try to sort of replicate what you think works. So if you're not already on some PR emails for games or from other indie teams of your size, whether it's solo or whatever, get on them and see how do they talk about their game. How is someone that isn't represented by PRing their game? And like what do you like or not like about it? What would get you interested in it? Because like I think that's the other thing too. You have to kind of like look at it from that perspective. But yeah, probably I would say probably gameplay is really the main thing. And either if not a trailer, honestly, gifs and images go a long way. I do click on trailers sometimes, but honestly, I just be doing that for the vibe sometimes, where it's like, you know what? Let's see what this game is. But it's more because like I just decided I wanted to, not because I was like excited to see a YouTube link in an email. Yeah, that's kind of me. Again, it sounds kind of intense, but it's kind of me going out of my way to do it. Like, you know what? Like, I got some time. I am kind of curious what this game is, because a lot of times when I get an email like that, the game in the email, it's barely said what the game is. It's kind of maybe given the name and like a generic sentence, and I'm like, you know what?
Mm.
Let's see what it is. Versus like when I am kind of compelled. Again, it has an interesting pitch. It has some things bolded. Again, very skimmable, very quick. Boom, the GIF looks cool. Oh yeah, I like that art. Oh, that sounds interesting. Or I know it's there has to be something to latch onto, because otherwise, like you're just uh, another game that exists, and it's like, well, now I kind of have to do that extra work to see like, is this special? Is it interesting? Like so I think that's the thing. You have to see like what is your hook. Lead with the hook, and then have visuals and standouts that support what that hook
Yeah.
is.
I think, yeah, even if you do have a very cool personal story involved, that's important. Journalists like to go into like who are the people behind the game. Like that's an important thing. Um, but if your game is confusing or is not well explained or doesn't have the hook, or the journalist can't see the hook of the game that you are presenting, then yeah, it's really there is no that is secondary to the gameplay itself. That being said, just making sure, like Janet said it perfectly, like journalists are going through their emails constantly. They're stuffed full of all variety of people asking for coverage of one sort or another. having an image or a GIF to be playing immediately for them to look at and be like, okay, I see the sauce right here and now, and I can differentiate it in my brain, um, is very helpful. On top of that, make sure again that you are helping them do their job as much as possible. So put links to everything, you know? If your game is on Steam and you don't have a Steam link to your game, if I have to go looking for your game, I'm not going to because I've got 50 more emails to go check out and I can't be looking at, you know, all of their background stuff. Um, should we focus on gameplay with its
Um,
trailer? Oh, go ahead.
really a quick way, just because you seem like you're as you're kind of working through what the next like pivot you want to make is. I want to also shout out just to really emphasize again, there are times where the development story is an interesting hook, like Spilled with an exclamation point, which is also
Yeah.
another tough thing, but
Mm-hmm.
cool game. Excited for that game. That's like that the person making it like also lived on like one of those boats that's like on the
Mm-hmm.
river. I'm kind of butchering that story, but like that was interesting because it's like, oh, you're the games, you're making it, you're on the boat, and then you're making a game, and then you're on the boat in the game. Like that was interesting. But even in because I think I came across that on social, but also in PR as well. But even in that context for PR, I believe it was sort of after like a little thing about the game, and then like by the way, and again that kind of made it stand out, and it all tied back, right? It's like, oh well, I have like this environmental feeling and this relationship with nature, and I'm using that to inform my game. Like it adds to like the story of the game. So again, there are times where it is relevant, but you have to like make sure that it is relevant specifically to like elements of the game's mechanics, narrative, like how it came to be, and not just like we work together. I think it's the other thing too. Like a lot of people have every now and then when I get like a kind of a colder email that's just like, non PR, just like randomly just set, find my email or whatever. Um, sometimes it's a little too like, look, I know like you really don't want to look at my game, but if you could like have be quick, be confident, and put it out there because I
Yeah.
do think a lot of people unfortunately have like a very like, I know that you'd never look at my game, but if you could, oh man, that would just be. It's like whoa, like now I kind of feel like I shouldn't look at your game because maybe like
No,
it kind of
absolutely.
you kind of you're you're scaring the pros is kind of the tagline I've been using for that kind
I
of thing.
mean,
It's like you
it's
stand out in a
not
way that is kind of
yeah.
negative,
It's not only negative sounding, but my brain immediately rings with I'm being manipulated, which is a number one if I get a whiff of any sort of manipulation. Please, please, oh, we need your help. Like it can be authentic, like you can really feel that way, but I'm like, no, you're trying to emotionally manipulate me into sharing your information, and then I'm not gonna do that. I appreciate that this means a lot to you, and this developer did not do that. Um, but yeah, in general, try to keep it as professional as possible. And also, a lot of this gives me PTSD because as a freelance journalist back in the day, um, all of this works for that as well. Like all of this advice is sort of like if
yeah,
you
that's
are,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you're emailing different people to like write for them or whatever, you have to take all of this into account as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it's
Yeah.
hitting in a lot of ways. Jenny,
I
what
want,
sorts of things?
yeah, I wanted to just add, I'm not a journalist, so I have a different, like, I don't have maybe the angle of like, I haven't been a journalist to receive these type of emails, but I think my strategy is always like, try to as much as you can. This is where if you have a PR company that does help, um, pitch things that are appropriate to the specific people you're reaching out to. So for some, and this works for influencers as well, because I know this team is asking specifically about media outlets, but because there's also a lot of coverage that is developed through influencers, and that is like my specialty, I would say don't discount creators in your outreach for game coverage. But you have some creators and some journalists who primarily focus on things like previews. You have some creators that focus more on reviews. You have video essayists or people who do more critical analyses of games, in their articles. And there are some journalists that do focus more on the industry and the conditions in which games are made. And so if you do have a story that you think could be interesting about your team, you do have to have a strong game to entice the journalists, but you can angle each of your pitches to the types of journalists and creators you're pitching to. And I would say, again, if you have the time to do that, that is the smartest way, and honestly would probably generate much more interesting coverage versus like a mass single type of email. But again, you have to decide what you're able to accomplish there.
Yeah. Jenny, that's a great segue into the next question. Should we ask for a review or only for a release announcement with a release trailer? What has worked for you in the past, Jenny?
um, I think, okay, sort of a tangential answer, but a lot of the marketing and PR process is about relationship building. And so I think usually the process is if you have this long period of time to build a relationship with the journalists you're reaching out to or the creators you're reaching out to, you can have these points in time where you share specific announcement at milestones of your game's development, and they can hopefully join you in the journey and share that with the audience. So if you have like a release announcement or a Steam page or a festival that you're participating in, you can like do that throughout the development of the game. I think if you're at the point where you have launched, um, I don't know. I feel like I personally always just send the key, send the all the information as succinctly as possible, and I ask for review coverage, but I provide the opportunity and say, here's the CTA, the call to action of like purchase now on Steam, and allow creators and journalists to like create what they need. I think if you ask specifically for something, and you two can also correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm asking for a specific type of content, that almost feels restrictive, where I'm like, if they can't do that type of content, they may not do anything. So I almost want to leave the door open for them to create whatever they want
Leave
or
the
need.
door open. I'm gonna leave the door open.
But I don't know. Maybe I'll learn something new today. Is it helpful to be like, I want specifically a review or specifically a release announcement?
Janet.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if that's what you want, like, I guess start going for it. But like, I think it depends. I think there's two angles to go with it. And one of the ones is what you already mentioned, Jenny, where you just send the key and you're like, hey, like this is what's up. Um, I think if you feel, and I don't know if this is the right way to like say this or perspective have. So Jenny, I definitely lean on you because you're the one that does this for a job. But I think if you're maybe more established in terms of having those relationships, having your name out there, there's interest in your game. That's when it's more of a let me know if you're interested in a review code, and the person has to email you to say I'd like a code, and then get the code. If you maybe feel like if you did that, you wouldn't get a lot of people who would ask for a code, then that's when if you have the option to, obviously different platforms are different, but if you have like Steam keys that you can give, you can just say, hey, here's here's a Steam key, depending on what you want. Because again, it's still your game, still your project. Like I'm not saying that you should just give your game away to a bunch of people in the hopes that it'll turn out to be beneficial to you. But if you're just looking for more coverage, send the key, say, here's a key, would love for you to check it out. Let me know if you end up doing any coverage with it, or I'd love to see any coverage you create with it, but no pressure to create. This kind of goes back to many episodes ago. We had the should you cold give people keys, and we kind of talked about the pros and the cons of that. Again, I'm down for a key if you don't need anything from me, kind of thing. Otherwise it does feel kind of like whoa, like I don't, because I think it is a little, for me it's a little rough if you would give someone a key and then say like, can you do this? Because then I'm like, no. So should I always wonder, like, do I email them back? Like, I'm not going to use this key, give it to someone else. Because I feel like, I don't want to not redeem it and then not, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of puts the positioning weird. I don't think I've ever gotten an email from any like PR thing that said like, can you do a review of this game? They might say like, do you want a key for cover it? But they don't actually it, which is kind of funny because like that's obviously what they want you to cover the game. Duh, that's why it's PR. But it's more like, would you like to cover it? Oh, cool. It's like this little, not a dance, but it is kind of like that. And I do think that's, again, back to the professionalism layer. Like, when you're getting professionally PR'd, they don't say, can you please review my game? they sort of, hey, we think you'd be interested. Oh, you're interested. And it's this back and forth kind of thing because it's kind of like you're asking for a favor in a way when it's like, think big picture too. Like Nintendo's not going to email anyone giving them a key, but they're not going to be like, hey, can you please review Super Mario Odyssey? They might say, are you interested in review codes? You can get one for your outlet. So again, you gotta walk with like the professionalism. And I think that goes back to even the request. The news thing I think is a little different because that's more like timely. So I more often, Jill, I'm curious what your inbox is like. It is more common for me to like get a request even from like more represented games to say, like we'd love for you to share out the trailer and the date, or are you interested in sharing out the trailer and the date? And then they gotta go from there, and then I just say, oh, I don't really do news, like I just do da-da-da, and then whatever. But I don't think I've ever been asked like, can you review this? So I don't know, Jill, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, just from reading this, the way that this question is written inherently, it says, should we ask for a review or only for a release announcement with the release trailer? It sounds to me that the ideal for this developer would be a review. It sounds so if that is the case, then set your expectations at review. And when even if you are not demanding something or begging for coverage, which you should not do, your expectation with what you want this journalist to do with whatever you're giving should be obvious. So if you are wanting a review, that's the angle you should stick with. But put in the release announcement information, put in the release trailer. Um, a lot of the times that helps. Maybe people will put that information in their review, or if they don't have time for a review, they will do a quick write up on the release trailer so that people can see, hey, there's a game coming out. So you don't have to either or. A lot of the time, if, like Janet was saying, if you've had runway and time to market your game, those things are usually separated so that you do get the email saying, here's the announcement, here's the release. Do you want to learn more? Or like, here's all the information in case you want to put that out there. And again, I think this goes to what Jenny was saying before, who's very smart. Um, you want to kind of pitch things to people the way you want to appeal to them for what their outlet does. So like also like Janet, I don't do a lot of news. I try to because news for a media outlet is usually a lot faster and it is a bread and butter sort of thing and you get a lot more eyes on news. But if you're a small indie game with a small team without a lot of presence, the news is not really going to be worth it for a lot of media outlets because here's a game you've never heard of from people you've never heard of, doesn't get clicks. You have to have some sort of, um, here's this team that made game out of pure gold or something, like then maybe again, what would you want to read if you're just on the internet? Like what would get you to look at something is a lot of the times what journalists have to think about. So that's what you want to think about when talking to journalists. Um, it never hurts to ask though. It never hurts to throw something out there and be like, here's the code for our game, here's the background, here's the announcement, here's the release trailer. We hope for review coverage from you. We love your work. That sort of thing. And yeah, that's I think the best that you can do for that. Does sharing our pitch deck we sent to publishers help get coverage? No.
No, I've never seen a pitch deck.
I was
so
going to
don't
say
send me
that is
yours.
I don't think, yeah, the purpose of the pitch deck, if when you're creating your pitch deck, the purpose of it probably is to get funding, and that's not something most journalists. I mean, again, there's a type of journalist that may be interested in how indie devs pitch and get funding, and that's like a whole different thing. But the average, I think, game coverage journalist would not necessarily care about the
Yeah.
pitch deck.
And like we've been saying too, a lot of what you should be sending Maybe there are elements of the pitch deck that would be interesting for journalists.
Yeah, that you can like
Mhm.
pull from to, you know, you don't have to make everything from scratch, but like things do need to be specific to kind of like a cover letter, right? It's like
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
probably, which I know cover letter, really tough thing to do.
Yeah.
It's like the bane of adulthood.
Mhm.
But, you know, I know for me at least, like I have a very general template of like these are the topics I talk about in the different paragraphs, and then they're obviously different though for different jobs because that is the point of the thing. Um, but yeah, back to your time thing too, though, Jenny. Like obviously, like it would be great if you could handcraft like an email for each person. It's like, and this one goes to Janet, and this one goes to Jill. But like, you know, it's not that wild if like me and Jill get the same email. That happens more times than not. It is just always a bonus if you had infinite time or something. You know, it's like, oh, you know, I get some emails that are like super hyper specific, which can be cool and eye catching in their own way. Not that you have to like kiss everyone's ass individually to get coverage or content or their eyes on it, but it's like people that really know me and my work that happen to be a developer who's like, oh, I heard you talking about this on this thing, and because of that, I'm sending you this. It's like, oh, they had a really specific reason, or they forced one, but I bought it because you wrote it well enough. So I'm like, oh, yeah, you do think I'll like your game. I think this person knows what they're talking about. Um,
I will
yeah.
say instead of a pitch deck, one thing that could be really helpful to send is a review guide, formatted similar to a pitch deck, but instead of having like, because again, pitch decks will have like your budget and again, stuff that doesn't really pertain to how a journalist would review. But in your review guide, you could have information that's really helpful for journalists and creators, like how long does it take to play through your game? So they can actually budget out the time and figure out how much time
Yeah.
it'll take for them to do the write up. You could have like the genres, keywords, like interesting facts. That's where you could put a little bit more about your team, for example, because that's not in that initial email. It's on a deck where they've already like chosen to invest the time into looking more into your game and your team and like figure out what the angle of their coverage would be. So I would say explore I forget who gave the suggestion, but like signing up for PR emails and seeing what gets sent.
Mhm.
Oftentimes you will get a review guide. And I would say taking those and just like copying the format and just putting your own information in is a great strategy.
Yeah. I think it also speaks to something we've been emphasizing is if you take a pitch deck meant for publishers, that is meant for publishers, and you want to be specific to the people that you are reaching out to. And if you're not reaching out to publishers, then something meant for them is not necessarily going to work. So
Mhm.
yeah. And again, I actually want to reemphasize what Janet said, because I know when looking for work or like freelancing and whatever, it's so disheartening to hear everyone be like, you need to make everything crafted to the person you're talking to and make it all. I mean, I would be personable and kind of know a bit about things, but most of my emails would be copy and paste and change to the person's name or whatever. So I'm not trying to say that you need to like get to intimately know each person that you're about to
Mhm.
write to, but like if you do things instead of saying like, I've gotten emails that are like, "Hey, you," like, "Okay, that's weird. I'm gonna skip that," you know? If you know my name, that helps. Uh, I'm happy enough
Or just don't
for
put you, because then I know you don't know my
Yeah.
name.
yeah.
You just say hello, good
I've
morning,
had
good
people do my
afternoon.
full
Whatever happened to the
name.
classics?
Yeah, like first and
Social
last
security number
name.
attached and everything, you know?
But, like, if when you get a, like, "Hello, Jill Grote," it's like, "Oh, you got this off of a list, and you're mail merging," and that feels weird. Um, I I just got one that I stopped and actually read this because of this that was like, "Hello, the Indian former family." I was like, that's really cute,
That's actually
actually."
kind of scary.
So I
I like how you
stopped
think
and I
that's cute.
read
I'm
that.
like, I'm scared.
I thought it was cute. Um So yeah, a lot of the times if you say the correct name of the outlet, like that's the sort of level that we're talking about. Like it is sort of scary how that effort isn't always made. Like where the bar is for communicating in a coherent way is sort of low. So like I'm not trying
Yeah.
to freak you out.
But that's good because it's easier to meet that standard, though. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I feel like sometimes people find that like scary, but it's like, no, like being pretty good, like it's just, everyone's still working at their craft, of course, but it's like one of the reasons that I think a lot of us are like, it sounds kind of cocky to say, but like we're pretty, established in our crafts. We're like known in our fields. We do pretty good work and in varying degrees. Is because it's like, why is it that that's true, but we all feel like we need to be doing more? It's because like, there's a lot at the bottom, kind of, because a lot of people want to do, these kinds of work gigs, hobbies, and they're hard to do because they require a lot of different skill sets. Like developing a game and marketing a game, those are like two very different skills that all have like a lot of skills inside of them, So like
Mhm.
it's which is also why I think a lot of people do, have PR companies because it's like the odds of one person being really good at all that are very low. I even feel that in my own career. And Jill and Jenny, I'm sure you have your own stories of like, I feel comfortable streaming. I don't make the best thumbnails, but I don't have the money to want to pay someone to make them. So it's like, I kind of just do what I can at, my level. And maybe I'm trying to make incremental improvements, but I'm never going to be as good as like an actual designer. Like when I go to a design, like the difference is night and day in what I can produce and what a designer can produce. But you don't necessarily have to have everything operating at the highest skill level. It just kind of has to be
Mhm.
good enough. And I think things can be tiered, right? Like I think it's easy to get really overwhelmed by all the things you have to do. I think start small and keep building up, keep working on it. Um, this person obviously has like a lot of questions and they're sort of maybe starting out in terms of like thinking of the marketing and business of games. So I think that's definitely something that they should like dig into more. Like maybe, if you want to, I'm making it up, if you have 5 hours a week to spend on like this marketing aspect, like maybe at least 30 of the minutes could be like some element of research, an hour,
Mhm.
whether it's reading some stuff, signing up for newsletters that you like read periodically, looking at what other people are doing. I forgot if it was posted on Innersloth's blog, but we referenced it a few shows ago of the
Mhm.
like the whole like Victoria put up like the pitch deck stuff. There's I'm forgetting. I feel like you guys would know that podcast that's about like PR stuff in games. What is the name of it? Ooh, I'll have to Google around for it. But it's like
Is that the
it's
one
It's
got
that
not
like
there.
Amanda and Mike, is that the one that they do?
I think so.
Oh my
I don't
gosh,
know.
I'm
Maybe
blanking on the
there's
name.
there's
Sorry.
several
Yeah.
different
We
like
love you
kinds of
guys.
those
Yeah.
things that you can check out. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure if that's the one I'm thinking, but there are people doing this kind of work and resources that are out there. I think it can be easy to be overwhelmed because there are a lot of them, but start with like something. If you're not already, get a if you don't already have one, have a friend who's a developer. Even if it's just like a casual, like kind of peer, someone who's like either at your level or right above you, so that you can kind of, not that you have to tier everybody, but you should have like almost tiers of people that where it's like maybe someone that's really successful and really established. Maybe someone's just starting out, and then you can kind of start to build your knowledge that way. I think too will go a long way because I mean, I don't even know all this stuff on this stuff because it's just not what I do. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Mm.
there's a good news, bad news. You have a lot that you can do. The bad news is it does need to get done, which is scary. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of options that will, I think, create forward momentum for this person or anyone listening. Like socials is a big thing that didn't even get mentioned in this. I think that's huge
Yeah.
for at least for me and my experience with like indies. Like I often find a lot through stuff on social, stuff
Yeah.
on those pitches that are like kind of to everyone, where it's like, hey, you don't have to be scared. It's kind of just to the world, right? Where it's like, do you it'll be something like are you someone who loves cozy games and like tidying up? And I'm like, yeah, it's very much like you're putting out lines and you're reeling it in and you're not going to get bites all the time, but like
Mm.
your job is not necessarily to get bites, it's to put out good lines. And if you're not getting bites, maybe you'll change where you're cast, maybe you'll change where you're fishing. But that's, I think, really what when it comes to stuff like this, it's like marketing forward. That's what I try to focus on, trying to get good at what I'm doing and how I'm helping get results, because results are very unguaranteed all the time, whether you're trying to grow on Blue Sky or get people to play your game. Like you cannot control that. There are incredible games that fail and vice versa. So just, do what you can, which in this case would be putting in that work and making strides towards marketing it.
Yeah.
Mhm. I feel like I'm always trying to figure out ways to work less and again, varying degrees of success. But I think one of the things that I've become more passionate about are what are the who are the people and where are the places I can go that will maximize my reach versus me having to individually go out to so like a ton of people. So in addition to thinking about like the journalists and media, which is great, you're already thinking about that angle. I mentioned earlier content creators. You know, if you reach one content creator and they're passionate about your game, they will advocate and be like I, sort of what is it, they're like the hero of your game to
Mhm.
their audience, and that word of mouth can be incredibly powerful. So that's like another angle you can take to widen that visibility of your game. Also, one thing that we didn't mention was like festivals. um,
Yeah.
Depending on the genre of your game, there are a ton of Steam festivals. And if you have it, especially if you have a demo available, but even if not, if your game is already out, find those Steam festivals that fit the genre of your game and participate in as many of them as possible, because that is another way, for example, to do one thing that once you have like demo assets or like festival assets, it's pretty plug and play. After you've done one or two, you kind of know the drill. And so doing a festival, that's a wider reach with minimal effort. And so finding those places where you can minimize your work is also really important as an indie dev.
Yeah. I think, your first question being, do you need a publisher or PR company to get coverage? Um, Apply that also to media outlets. Do you need media outlets to get eyes on your game? Not necessarily. You can think outside the box in that, and a lot of indie developers are very good on social media or in other ways of picking up steam. And once that steam is there, then outlets will flock to you. Um, but yeah, it's going to be like, we hope for the best. We hope all indie developers are doing well, and yeah, make sure to keep your um, mental state okay. You know, be okay. Work on yourself too.
And
Um,
know that it'll take time. Like, I think we blow up a lot of people who are like overnight successes, or they feel like overnight successes, but a lot of times like these are people who have released multiple game jam games. They've done a lot of like relationship building in the industry. So I think also doing all of these efforts may feel like they're in vain, especially if you're building a community or you're not hearing back from any journalists, nobody's requesting keys. Um, don't take that to heart in a lesson learning manner. Don't take it to heart as a, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this, because there is a point in this industry where it's not necessarily just, are you making a good game, are you not? It's, there are so many other factors, like what time of year is it, whether what other games are coming out, did the journalist just have a bad day and skim over your email? Like, there are so many things out of your control. So understand that do everything you can, but know that it can take a lot of time. And maybe it's not this game that like blows up. Maybe next game you'll have more success. And every time you're building those relationships and finding more success. So that's a longer game, but you know, just keep that in mind as well.
and on that note, let's talk about games that are out or that we've been playing at least. Um, Janet has a huge list for us today. I'm
Finally, it's
so
Yay.
finally my
excited to
turn.
talk about it. You know,
I'm,
she's ready. She's been eating.
I'm
So, Janet,
here.
what have you been playing?
I've arrived. I'm opening these PR emails and actually getting back with coverage. Did I send that coverage over? I didn't yet. I probably should, just to be like, hey, I played this game that you had sent me. Yeah, I'm gonna keep a lot of these short because there are a lot of them, and I'll go in depth on a couple key ones. But now that it's January, for me that's December cleanup, especially early in the year. It's, if you are someone that loves keeping up with the calendar, January is still a great time to clean up on games from last year, because it's usually a little bit quieter for releases. Obviously, there's games coming out all the time, but like, I know for me at least, it is a few weeks until there's something where I'm like, like, I think Citizen Sleeper 2 was my first like, yeah, that's a game coming out this year that I want to check out. Um, so I got to really clean up some 2024 games. I checked out a bunch of stuff. I'll start with Caves of Cud, which we referred to last week. Played an hour. Not sure if I'll continue because I still don't know if it's a me game. It is quite chunky, but it is not as complicated as it looks. It is still complicated, but I looked at it, and we discussed this previously last week. I looked at it and I thought, like, there's no way in hell I'll even know what's going. Like, the screenshot glance of this game looks like I'm writing the code that's in the game that I'm playing, and that's really scary to me.
Mhm.
It's not like that. It's just that it's very like old school PC, sort of constantly like having a log of what you're doing, like the activities and all of that. It's a very menus heavy game. I did play it with controller, and I found it to play actually pretty well with controller, but it definitely is one that probably lends itself better to PC just because there's many tabs. But it's like a cool little adventure game. There's like a bunch of different classes. There's like seemingly kind of infinite content in it. So I think if you're open to checking out adventure like that, it's not as scary as it seems. I think the tutorial I think is really well done. Still definitely struggle to play it and understand what's going on, but like I was able to get going pretty easily with how well they made that tutorial. So um, don't be afraid of it, but only you will know if it's for you because it's that kind of PC kind of game.
I wish they put
I
that on
did
the
play
back
it.
of the box. That's
Don't be
Don't be
afraid. Yeah.
afraid.
don't be afraid of it.
Well, because the people that are sick are already not afraid. Because it's like it's one of those like the people that are fans of this game are like, this is my thing, and then everybody else is
Mhm.
like, that looks a little intimidating. And yeah, I'm happy to report that it's not as hard to deduce as I thought.
Good.
I did play a short trip because the PR email won. I was like,
Yeah.
5 years to make, 5 minutes to play. That sounds cool. And the art is very pretty. I will say this one's a not for me. I thought I would. The thing with this game, so it's you have a tram. You're going from like left to right, and
Mhm.
you're picking up like anthropomorphic like cat people. It's like
Yep.
cats like on 2 feet in trench coats. Awesome art, very pretty. I think for me and it seems kind of weird to like kind of hyper analyze it. It is it's a very short game. I think for me the thing that didn't really resonate as strongly is I was hoping, while I knew it was a very like minimalist gameplay kind of game, I was hoping there would be more that I could latch onto. Like I was hoping maybe like the sound design would be really affecting, or just there would just be like a little more. I didn't necessarily need more mechanics because I understood what I was in for, but it just didn't resonate in the way that, or like maybe more like a narrative. Like I thought there'd be just a little bit more for me to get excited about.
Mhm.
And I think another thing that I thought was a little bit tough to wrap my head around is there isn't really like an end. Like you deliver the people to where they're going. It's like you pick up 3 people, you go to the next stop, it continues. And when you get to the end of like the path, like nothing happens. So I'm like, do I have to go back to the left? So even like that kind of, it didn't leave me with the best feeling, but it does look very pretty. It is fairly cheap. I don't remember how much it costs. It's like a couple dollars, I think,
It is
offhand. Um,
1.99.
yeah. So it's like I think, it's very much an art type of game in terms of like the visuals. So I think again, 199, that's not a lot to buy in for, but this is another one where you'll just know if you're kind of into that sort of thing. But I was a little bummed because I'm open to that sort of thing, and it just didn't really hit for me on a big way. I also played The Cabin Factory, which is sad that Mike's not here. This is a scary
Yeah,
game,
this
so
would
maybe
have been
Mike would
his
be
Mhm.
excited.
jam. I don't know if he's played it though.
Yeah, it's very much like well, I'll just explain what it is. It is a first person game where you are you like work for a company, and your job is to like look into a cabin. Like a cabin appears on a conveyor belt, you walk inside and you look around and you're looking to see if anything is moving. If anything is moving, you have to run out of the cabin, and you have a sort of kiosk in front of you that says like yes, no, like kind of haunted or okay, and you like select what you think the cabin is. And that's what the game is. I believe the end state is you just get like 10 in a row right, or there's like a certain number that you get correct. If you fail one, it kind of resets. And that's what the game is like. It's just too scary for me. I think it's definitely fun. Like I've streamed it, and it's got that fun like streamer scary game. And it even has Twitch integration, which is cool, where your chat can like vote on whether or not they think the cabin is haunted. But I went to this game just thinking it would be formulated a little differently. Um, it was more. I thought it'd be more like spooky and vibes, and it's like, no, we're scary, and that you're scared. I'm like, nah, I don't want to be scared.
Yeah, it's a
So
creepy game. It's a
yeah.
creepy
Did you
game,
play it?
and I think, I very quickly surmised that this is a streaming game, and it's very fun to watch people play and to watch people get freaked out. It is not, for me at least, the same to be in the driver's seat. I
Yeah.
think it is a lot more fun
Mm.
to watch, especially if you like, once you know what's happened and you can go in and be like, "Oh, this is gonna be the thing with this, but, um Yeah, I think that this is a streamer-ass streaming game. Uh, so go watch people play it because it's really, really fun.
Yeah, I did. I won't spoil it here, but because I'm like, guys, I cannot do this game. I have to leave. I played like, I don't know, 15 minutes of it or something. I'm like, I gotta bow out. But someone in chat did say like, oh, since you're not gonna finish it, can I tell you how it ends? I thought there was some cool surprises there, to the game, and even in what I played, like there were some fun twists. Um, Again, I don't really want to give them away because I think that is the fun of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is definitely, if you can stomach that kind of horror, that's cool. It's not jump scary though. It's just scary. There is a jump scares on that you can turn on in the settings, which someone told me it doesn't do what I think it does. So I don't know what's going on there, but
I know what it does. It's
I was gonna say,
hilarious.
Jill.
what does it do?
I'm not telling. I'm not saying.
Okay, yeah, I guess it was. Yeah, but so
But if
there's a
you are
lot of
playing
like
this game,
fun
you have to do that.
surprises. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of fun surprises, but I was like, no, I'm genuinely horrified playing this.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
For real though,
Okay.
if Mike hasn't played this, we absolutely need to get him to play it and have us kind of be on his shoulder and watching it.
I don't even know if I want to watch anyone play this. I'm just a scaredy cat, so it's like
Just
I don't even
watch
think I want to
Mike.
watch
You
anyone
don't
play
even
it.
need to watch the game. Just watch Mike play the game.
I just was very scared playing this.
Yeah, it's
I
a
was
scary
like,
game.
I'm unwell. Like I just couldn't do it. Opposite end of the spectrum. Finally booted up a little to the left. Why didn't I play
Yes.
this game earlier?
It is so
It's
good.
so good.
I'm only like a couple puzzles into it, but so I'll talk more once I continue with it, which I'm sure I will in the coming weeks. This game, it's funny. It's one of those games where I started playing it, immediately took my phone out, I'm taking notes. I'm like, I want to write an article on this game. It's so good. This game feels like taking like a deep breath in and an exhale. Like that's what this game is like. And from the jump, it like I love a game. I also want to make this into an article as well. Like I love games that have like incredible quick and like integrated tutorials and like through like their design, and you get like a picture that's like tilted. It's like you move it to the center, like you did it. Like it's almost the satisfaction that you get from something like a what the golf car bat, you know, that
Yeah.
series of games where they kind of immediately quick hit the gameplay. It's like that, but with like little puzzles. I think the hint system is very cool too, where you're like erasing the like the markings to see the answer underneath. Yeah, that's been really cool. And then my last two, Symphonia. I think I actually misspoke on my stream. I said this was a Metroidvania. It's not a Metroidvania. I don't know where I read that or heard it or made it up in my mind. It's just it's a platformer that has like a lot of music inspiration in its lore and environmental design. Frankly, it's just fine. Like it's very much like it is good. Like it's like it's like very, very 7 out of 10 vibes I get from Symphonia. And yet, you know, I'm a big platformer fan, so I have been sticking with it. It's a short game as well. It's only 4 hours, so I've been enjoying playing that. It is a bit more in the puzzle platformer side. It's not like it's necessarily puzzle-y, but a lot of the platforming is, I mean, all platformers are about this a little bit, about planning out your jumps, but it's definitely like, it slows the action down a lot, where a lot of the platforming is you like attaching yourself to a moving platform, and you have like kind of infinite time to think before your next move, and that's the aspect that feels like puzzly to me. They do describe it as like a difficult precision platformer game. I don't really feel like it's that difficult, but I'm also very good at platformers. But I don't think it's that. Did anyone else play this? I don't think it's that difficult of a game.
Yeah, I played the demo at least, and at least in the demo, it felt actually quite accessible. I felt like because I thought it was going to be a bit more challenging. So maybe it's also, you know, the demo's the first part of the game, so maybe it's like the easier part. But I felt like it was pretty accessible.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's too hard. There's definitely like challenges in it. Like they have the Celeste Strawberries thing for like some of their stuff, but it's not nearly as like intricate or mazy. Like I think it's harder than a game that just has platforming in it, but it's not as hard as like when I think of a hard platformer, you know, I'm thinking of Celeste, Super Meat Boy, all these other titles. Like it's not even close to that, but it's a little bit harder than just like a game where you jump, you know? But yeah, I'm enjoying that a bit. And my last one is probably my favorite of all the games that I've played. Yeah, I think I put it above Little to the Left, honestly. I think Lock Digital. Apparently this was originally a pen and paper game, which don't know how that worked. because it works so well as a video game. You do need a. I don't think it has controller support, but I don't know offhand, so don't quote me on it. But I played with just mouse. Um, and at the time of this airing, it will also be available on mobile, iOS and Android. So I like the game so much playing it on my stream that this also happens with PR stuff. I went back into my emails because I remember them emailing me about like the iOS version and was like, "Hey, can I get this version on here?" I played it. I like it so much. I'd love it on mobile to speak to it there. So I got that on mobile. Also great. I think it's a great mobile game. The second I played it, I'm like, I wish I just had this on my phone. It is essentially you get different, like a set of words, kind of like you might have like they're in the form of acrostic. So there's like they're touching, but it's not necessarily overlap. It's not like the L's are shared or something like that. But you might get like a set that says lock and then a blank space and then lock and another blank space. And when you highlight the word lock, that lets you clear one tile. So maybe you clear then the blank tile. You highlight the other lock, you clear the other blank tile. Or fill the tile rather. And your goal is to have all the tiles filled. And that is what the game is. Sometimes you are filling a letter because you're just trying to like clear the space. And then there's other words that have other tile filling abilities. So like the next word you get is like talac, and that one can fill two adjacent spaces. But the spaces also are adjacent if you fill in the stuff in between, those become adjacent spaces. I also think it tutorializes it really well. So if you are listening and like having a hard time visualizing it feels very natural when you're playing it. So the progression is that you get different words added to your dictionary that you can use when puzzle solving, and the complexity increases. So this one's interesting because it's a game that uses words, and in that sense, it's kind of a word puzzle game. But it's a very different take on, I think, the idea of a word game because it's not really looking at like spelling or dictionary. It's more looking at placement and thinking about the type of words you want to implement to fill the adjacent or potentially adjacent tiles. Really like it a lot. Having a blast with it. Yeah, I can't wait to play more of it. It's been a really great time. So if you like those kinds of puzzle games that are like the quick hit pure puzzle games, in the same vein of Unitide and the Cats Organized Neatly and those kind of like I'm going in, there's a puzzle, I can finish it, next puzzle. Lock Digital is another one that I think you want to add to your list. The art is also pretty cool as well.
Yeah. I like this one of what I played. I played a demo way back when. Charles Hart very recently did an impressions piece on Lock Digital for us.
Nice.
And he came away very like impressed with it. So go check that out. I think Jenny, do you want to talk about how Spirit Swap's going?
Um, I mean, I'm just excited because it's launching now in just under 2 weeks.
Yeah, it is.
And so
Yay!
yay. Uh, Mostly my free time at playing games, again, because Spirit Swap is like my night job,
Mhm.
my night gig, is uh playing Spirit Swap has taken up most of my indie time, unfortunately. So I have actually Lock Digital is on my list. There are a couple of like codes that I have in my inbox that I'm this weekend. Actually, we are at the point where I don't have to test as frequently, which is great. I'm feeling good. So now I'm just like, all right, maybe I can play other games and
Mhm.
enjoy not Spirit Swap.
It's good
Um,
timing because you
yeah.
got a lot of good games coming up next week.
Yep. So I will have
How are
more.
you?
I'll
Sorry, I was just gonna say, how are you gonna celebrate when it's out?
um I mean,
Swapping
I'm gonna be
spirits.
going up yeah, swapping spirits. I'm going up actually to Washington to be with the rest because the rest of the team, there's like 3 other members, in the core
Mhm.
Soft Not Week team. So I'm gonna be going up to Washington, just spending the weekend, ahead of launch and then the first like spending most of the week there so we can all be like together
Nice.
when the game launches and
That's awesome.
Cool.
probably do like K barbecue at home um and hot pot and yeah, probably hopefully watching people play, seeing what people think.
Yeah, that's cool.
So very excited.
Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Um, and then hopefully after that next week, we'll be able to talk about it right on the show.
Yeah, I'll plug my ears the whole time.
But, this week I have been playing Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. I got to play this a little bit at PAX West last year, and it's still very good. I haven't been able to play a ton of it, but the action is smooth as you want it to be. The story, the narrative, the way that it's all unfolding, it's creepy and compelling at the same time. Absolutely beautiful, hand drawn for a lot of the cutscenes and things of that nature, um, and kind of a 2D, 3D effect for actual gameplay, which again, they put a lot of detail into even just like things in the foreground, and they kind of tell their own story about this sort of post-apocalyptic. You start out, you don't really know what's happened to the world. You climb out of this metal encasing, which seems to have saved your life, and what's happened to everybody and what's going on is something you kind of find out along the way. A really cool aspects of it is that you are kind of a young girl who has, special abilities. But as you start out, it's really just a single jump. Um, you can't even like attack, you can dodge. But then you come across a body that has been pierced through, and you are able to give them a little bit of magic so that they can get up and like, you know, get it out of my chest. And then that person turns out to be a figure that you can connect with in a special way because of your powers, which gives you a new ability. So it is a really interesting melding of mechanics and story because you are invested in the NPCs because they also allow you to do things. So anytime in the future that I hit X to attack something, that person pops up and swings their sword on my behalf. And you kind of get to know like what anytime you sort of meet another one of these figures, you see a cutscene of what's happening in their life and how the recent events have affected them or anything like that. And then you get another mechanic, which this is a somewhat Metroidvania, so you do usually that allows you to get somewhere else or open a new place. So it's really intriguing so far. As far as I can tell, it's been very well received, and I'm not surprised to see it from what I've played. So go check that out. Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. I also got to play Tyrant's Realm, which came out, I think, last week, but very recently. This is a kind of it's a PS1 visuals mix between a Souls game and like Dead Cells. Like, it's got a lot of elements of both of those, and it's very cool. I played it on stream, so you can go watch me actually play it. Um, you go through and you're killing baddies and that sort of thing. It's very Souls-esque. Um, your equipment that you put on comes with different, abilities. So, like, one of my favorites was, like, a thief's hood. So, like, when I killed someone, I could hit the abilities button and then loot the bodies, so I would get more money, essentially. Like, I didn't know you could do that at the beginning, but and then I got, like, a poisoner's outfit, and that allowed me when I hit the abilities button, I poisoned my weapon,
I
and
love
that
to
helped me.
poison and I love to
Yeah.
steal.
You gotta poison and steal at different times because you can't have both of them on at the same time, unfortunately, but, like, that
Well, no
really
game is
helped me.
perfect, so
The poisoning really helped me when I got to, the 2nd area boss, is like a big old beefy elephant guy. Um, and so I could just like come in there. I ended up really liking like brass knuckles. They were fast, they were agility, probably not the best to go after with this like big beefy opponent, but because I had the poison, I could just run out and then it would slowly drain. So I didn't have to put myself in the way of like a giant
mm.
like beefy tank attack. Um, and it's really cool the way that that's done. Every once in a while, you enter into a room. You're kind of going like room to room to room, dungeon delving. You'll enter into like the merchant safe area where you can fill up what looks like really messed up medieval lemonade, which is your healing ability. You can put down a number of coins towards something. So like an extra flask costs 600 coins or whatever. I only have 50, so I'll put 50 coins down. That only 550 coins for me to get that unlocked, so on and so forth. So we have a really good reason to want to collect coins and to think about what your strategy is. It's a really cool, interesting game that I hope a lot of people get to check out because I think it flew a little bit under the radar. But that is Tyrant's Realm. So go check that out.
Um,
That's out now.
quick
Cool.
quick question I have
Yep.
on this is, and sorry if I missed it because I know you just mentioned the coins thing. So are the coins their version of souls? And on that note, is it like you get hit and then or you die and you have to pick up, because it's also I'm like looking at the Steam description. It's a roguelite as well. So how does that
See, Janet,
like how does that aspect function in?
I'm a little too good at this game, so I didn't die.
Wow. Jill said ask a worse gamer because I wouldn't know what happens
Gamer.
when you die.
I have no idea what happens when you die.
I've actually never died in video games.
In
So
my
What
entire
a
life.
flex.
Oh dang!
Yeah.
I messed up my camera. Being
my bad. Yeah.
too excited.
You're too powerful. That's why,
yeah.
Jill.
No, that is
So
like
yeah,
that is so funny.
but I do imagine you lose that.
Wow.
Dang it! And there's my face. So yeah, no, it's really cool. I'll have to go and die just for you, Janet. And I'll be like
Wow.
specifically, hey everyone, I'm dying on purpose this time. So yeah, that is Tyrant's Realm. I can see a little cat coming in. It's like I'm so blurry, but I can still see that my cat is about to cause mischief. Hello, Rufus. How are you? Can you guys see him? Yeah. There we go. Camera for the cat.
That's what the cat came in for, to fix the camera.
I have a couple of previews that are going up this week. One went up today as we are recording for Far Away. And Janet and I both checked out. This was for an event over the break. And this is a really meditative, but also strategic game, which is interesting. It's an interesting combination because it kind of seesaws between the two. You are somewhat controlling, you are influencing a shooting star, and you are trying to create constellations in the sky with your shooting star, but you don't really. Are you laughing at me, Janet? Because there's just cat.
Yeah, I'm looking at Rufus.
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
You don't really have much control over where you're. I'm trying, Rufus. I'm trying to be serious. Okay. Thank you. You don't have much control over your shooting star, but you can kind of hook them into the orbit of another star if it passes by to kind of change its trajectory. So you're constantly trying to do this without crossing a line that you've already made, because that will cancel out your constellation. So it is a perfect mix of just like really relaxed, laid back, meditative flow state, but also thinking ahead and being strategic about where you are going and putting things. I'm really excited to see this come out. It is still 2025 window. But yeah, it's going to be worthwhile. Also, if you go and read my preview, you will see that poor Giovanni from Digital Trends is going to have to die, and you'll find out why. Tomorrow I have set, so by the time that this is up, you should see on my website a preview for Morsels,
Nice.
which is the game that comes from creators from like Nidhogg 2. It's a very silly game. It is a twin stick shooter kind of roguelike where you're going through different rooms and destroying enemies. I was kind of told to skip past any of the narrative things. So and I was told it wasn't exactly a narrative heavy game. But it is a good feeling twin stick shooter, bullet hell, with a lot of personality to it and a lot of just like don't question what's going on, like you don't want to ask questions. I asked a lot of questions in my interview and things just went off the rails a little bit. It's clever, it's got secrets to delve into, it is a tough. Like, it's kind of a tough game. I was cowardly throughout the whole thing, so I was able to get through a couple of, levels, and how the levels interact with each other or why you go from one to the other, I can't tell you. It's sort of wild. There was, like, a Frogger-like situation at one point, then I was in the middle of a maze that was like a science lab, and I was fighting a big croaky monster looking thing. Um, yeah, it's so good. It's so compelling. And when you're in the middle of it, you just don't want to stop, and everything mechanically feels amazing. You play as a mouse, and for some reason, you can transform into these things called morsels, and each morsel has its own individual, unique gameplay style. So the first one I played as had like your typical twin stick shooter. You just shoot one projectile in a line. The next one I got access to, it left fire, a trail of fire behind it, so that I would just run away and enemies would run into it, which was perfect for my cowardly style of playing. Um, and
Same.
yeah, you're trying to accomplish a goal, but what that goal is and what's going on is barely hinted at. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Janet, did you get any more sense of what this game was about?
About not quite. It's kind of like a messed up little like Binding of
It's just
Isaac if it was like a sewer rat
yeah.
mixed with I guess like old school Cartoon Network. That's like the vibes that I get from it. It's like got kind of a grungy, like it's honestly, it's Annapurna, but it has the energy of Devolver in a good way.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think it's very cool and funky and different. I do think it controls really well, and it has a lot more, not that it's necessarily better, but just to use it as a comparison point to Binding of Isaac, it has a bit more mechanical diversity in the equipping of morsel, at least out the gate. Obviously, like Binding of Isaac, the big thing is that you're, picking up things that will like change how, like, what's up with your tears, or like what's, maybe you fire more tears or you leave, there's different like things that you pick up throughout. And this also has that type of structure, but kind of building on top of the fact that you have these different morsels that function differently. So it gets pretty, I think, diverse pretty quickly, which I think is fun. And there's also a lot of really interesting exploratory things within the environment, and just different takes on what you're used to seeing. So something as simple as like get a key to open a chest. We've done that a million times in a game, but you've done it like way less times where you have to like physically hold it and carry it. Again, not a novel thing. Like other games have made you physically carry a key and put it down to fight before to get to a chest, but it's not done as often. Another thing that was really cool was like, I forgot if it was a morsel or if I think I picked it up from an enemy. There was an enemy that has a shell on it, and you can wear the shell, and then you can use that shell to maybe like walk through a bunch of projectiles to get to like an area that wouldn't be accessible otherwise. So there's like fun uses of sort of drops enemies might have as well. And yeah, the whole art style's got like a colorful, but then it's like, what if you had a really colorful palette and then briefly dipped it in mud and then you put it back? That's
Yeah.
like the vibe
Toxic
and the
mud.
energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
Then
feels
yeah, I
very
think it's
like
cool.
Aw Real Monsters, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nickelodeon slimy dark
Hmm.
version. Yeah.
But it's definitely a game that is comical. It is a
Mhm.
comical but like grave, seriously comical is sort of the vibe I got from it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm more excited to play that. This is a game that was originally, I believe, set for the February window and it moved out, but it still should be coming in 2025. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, I think that's the end of this week's council. Thanks to everybody for joining us. No thanks to Mike, who did not join us. Uh, we're
Mission
on
series at the end.
just got to make sure I get those shots in there when I can. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The Indie Council has its own socials, which Janet put an amazing image on last time, and that was super
Oh,
exciting to
thanks.
see. But yeah, we're on the Indie Council on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and on the Bad Place for the moment. You can go check that
Mostly Blue
out.
Sky.
Yeah, Blue Sky. Go check us out. But this session is closed. Go play some indies.